Hey guys, I'm David,
And I'm Travis,
and welcome to another Game Detectives Analysis.
where we look at what makes specific games work and what doesn't.
So, for the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about Rare and the best games and songs and everything else that the company has to offer. But nobody's perfect, and there has to be some games that really aren't up to par.
Yes, unfortunately, not all of Rare's games live up to the design standard of Banjo-Kazooie. Today we're going to look at the cult classic Conker's Bad Fur Day, and while it's enjoyable at points, there are a lot of glaring problems.
And I really wanted to like Conker's Bad Fur Day. The hype for it was huge online, it was selling for $80 on Amazon, and everybody on the internet seemed to love it, but I was really disappointed by the game, especially when it came to its humor, which seemed like one of its best selling points.
Conker's Bad Fur Day is a very different kind of game. It's not really similar to any other platformers at the time because it doesn't really have collectibles besides the money, which we'll get to later, and the levels, which are usually very separated and have individual names in other platformers, do not follow that trend. You can easily wander into a different level without knowing you're in a separate area.
I remember I went into the barn area first after going to the hub world, and I thought it was just an extension of the main world. The game's also different from a lot of other platformers because of its mature rating. But again, most of what was edgy back then really doesn't translate to what's quote-unquote mature now.
So let's really dig into why Conker's Bad Fur Day didn't live up to the hype for us. First, let's talk about the basic controls of the game. Conker's ability to jump high and do the helicopter-y tail hover is actually utilized pretty well throughout the game. There are many puzzles that depend on adept platforming skills, and this move works nicely as a way to get across these stages.
Yet, sometimes when you hover, the camera positions itself at odd angles, making it hard to have a sense of space, such as when you climb up the Bat's Tower. Here, the camera really gets in the way of traversing the landscape by just making it hard to see what's going on. Great games make the camera smooth, so the player rarely even notices that the camera moves around. Conker's Bad Fur Day's camera gets in the way a lot of the time, making the game harder than it actually is.
And while the hover move at least works well, Conker's ability to use a frying pan to hit enemies is poorly designed. This special attack commits platforming sin number 1. Using it stops your forward momentum completely, much like the original roll attack in Banjo-Kazooie. Seeing as Rare fixed this for Tooie, you'd expect them to let Conker's momentum continue forward during his attack as well, but since Conker stops to use it, the frying pan move really throws off the pace of the game by making you stop to hit moving enemies. It's frustratingly difficult to hit most of them. It does not respond instantly to your input controls, leading to a distinct delay between the time you hit the B button and the time the move is executed. Considering how Rare has the ability to make great control responses, it really doesn't make sense that they couldn't for Conker as well.
And most of the controls in the game really aren't refined enough to be at Rare standards. When you have to throw knives to cut down electrical wires so you don't get electrocuted by rising water, the throwing mechanic is really disjointed and doesn't have a crosshair or any other way to aim. So you only have a limited amount of time to cut down these wires, and the fact that the throwing is really hard to control doesn't help.
The gun controls used in the later half of the game also don't work very well because they don't respond to players' movements fast enough to actually ensure you know where your shooting will end up. Similarly, the tank and pitchfork controls are stiff and don't respond quick enough to the button inputs. Most of the controls in the game have a significant delay to input, making the game seem like a constant lag.
Next up, the context-sensitive pads. While these pads are a unique idea in the platforming world, and they offer a variety of things to do in the game, they ultimately don't do much to make the game more complex or interesting, beyond the fact that it's never been done before. The best uses of the pad are those that are so off the wall that they shock the player. For example, I thought it was cool to use a flamethrower in the Bat Tower to kill the bats, but most of the context-sensitive pads really aren't all that unique and don't stand out.
The main problem with these pads is they relegate the game to a process of go to this pad, press B, do something, go to the next area, rather than teaching you different moves that you have to apply to different situations as you choose. This game hands you exactly what you need to solve each puzzle. There's really no freedom of choice when it comes to solving these puzzles, which ultimately makes the game extremely linear.
In Mario, Banjo-Kazooie, or other games of the time, you learn moves or you have a variety of moves, and these allow you to solve puzzles in a lot of different ways. You can take the long path, or you can wall jump to the next part of the level. You can fly to the top of the lighthouse, or you can climb the mountain. In Conker's Bad Fur Day, you don't get any choice in how you actually solve these puzzles, because they're already decided for you.
In fact, every time you play the game, you would have to complete all of the challenges and defeat all of the bosses in the exact same way. While other games fall into similar traps when it comes to replayability, Conker's does not even allow you to choose how you want to defeat a boss or solve a puzzle. You must do the exact same thing every time, which cuts down on the game's replayability. Another reason the game isn't that replayable is none of the worlds are really that memorable.
Hold on! That poop level was hilarious.
Okay, alright. Aside from the poop level, none of the worlds are memorable. The farm level uses the same music from the overworld and doesn't even have its own main theme. The barn seems very separate from the rest of the world and nothing really fits together. Like, why are these cubes jumping up and down? They're just here to make a puzzle. Even when it doesn't fit in with the level design, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense or create a cohesive experience.
The Bat's Tower doesn't really fit with the rest of the water level. Ooga Booga can't be accessed from the hub world. Only the levels Heist, It's War, and Spooky have strong themes, but again, the levels are hindered by the poor controls. It's hard to be truly immersive when you can't shoot a gun properly.
The music for each level really isn't that exciting or memorable either. Most of them aren't catchy, and they lack any distinctive instrumental or melodies that really make that rare music pop. The best level music is probably the Ooga Booga level, and we had to find the songs just on YouTube to remember them. The music really doesn't add anything to the levels because they're so bland and generic.
The bosses for each level are poorly designed too. Even though the Great Mighty Pooh might have one of the better boss intros of all time, his fight is really just pressing B and throwing toilet paper at him. His attacks are so easily avoided that the only time I did die in the boss fight was just falling off the edge into the poo. All the other bosses are similar in that you have to do the same thing multiple times, making the boss fights really boring and repetitive.
Many other games like Mario and Zelda use the same concept for their bosses, but the development teams for those games know how to make the bosses more challenging as the fight goes on. The best bosses have a natural sense of progression and difficulty. None of the Conker bosses really get all that more challenging as the fights go on. They're really easy enough to not even be fun when battling them.
Which brings up another major flaw in the game. Not only were the bosses repetitive, but so many of the quests in the game just made you do the same thing over and over again. When you have to pee on the rocks in the rock club, you just have to do the same thing 3 times. When you get the key for the vampire, you have to do the same thing 3 times.
Even though a lot of games are guilty of this, like Mario for example, most games at least add a little variety to their puzzles and bosses. But Conker's does so little to make these puzzles even remotely interesting. I can only get this rat to cheese so many times before I want to move on to a different game. The game offers little in actual momentum and compelling reasons to keep playing it.
The money, which is the only real collectible in the game, actually makes it more linear. You get money by completing the tasks in the game, but there's no money that's kind of out of the way of the main areas, which doesn't compel the player to explore the world like other platformers.
Conker's Bad Fur Day just comes across as a game that can't decide what it wants to be. There are so many different playstyles and control schemes, the game comes off as a very varied and non-cohesive experience. And the humor, which is often lauded in the game, is plain stupid and lazy.
Hey, there are some parts of the humor that I like in the game. Conker's is at its best when it leans into the insanity of what a video game can allow a player to do. When you get to feed the cows prune juice and make them have violent diarrhea, the game shows just how crazy its world can be. In that scene, the voice acting helps a lot by giving the cows a funny Irish lilt.
The best jokes in the game are often based only on the delivery of the voice actors alone. Many of these lines, such as everything Death says, rely solely on delivery. It is cool that all of the male voices in the game are done by the director, but this doesn't seem to explain why some of the voice acting is so colorful and others, like the bale of hay or cogs, are kind of lazy. While it's great to have full voice acting in a Nintendo 64 game, the actors could have improved the humor by pushing their voices to the extreme. The Great Mighty Pooh, the Irish Cows, and Death all have distinctive voices and personalities that allow them to be larger than the game characters, yet so many of the other characters like the Scarecrow and any of the Rock People and the Bees don't have a distinctive enough voice to actually remember what they've sounded like.
For most of the jokes, they just tend to fall flat. The movie references to Saving Private Ryan and The Matrix could have been alright, but they're so thinly conceived they're not even funny. It basically amounts to, hey, this is the plot from that one movie, or remember The Matrix? They wore trench coats too, haha. You know, those references are so poorly done that it basically reads like the script for an epic movie.
And the final boss, which is the xenomorph from Alien for whatever reason, does not make sense when it comes to the game and just hinges on shock value. The alien comes out of nowhere in such a strange way that it feels like it could have only worked back when Conker came out, which was 20 years after the release of Alien. After playing the game once and knowing what's coming up, it's not exciting or cool that this final boss shows up for no apparent reason. Apparently, this boss fight is supposed to be a parody of the one in Mario 64 with the tail grab and swinging, and if that's the case, they really should have taken more notes from that game, because the controls are stiff and much less engaging than Mario's.
Again, it just seems like a poor imitation of the original source. Why reference Alien? Why make fun of Mario? Most of the jokes that hinge on shock factor just don't work. The cogs rely on the old "aren't gays funny" joke that doesn't age well, the references are dated, the swearing's not really that edgy as the maker of the games want it to be, and the sheer number of times the game breaks the fourth wall is just frustrating.
I think that it would have been more fun to have Death be the main fourth wall break character, but again, the final boss relies on this weird joke that Conker talks to the makers of the game and convinces them to let him win. If Conker had not continuously been talking to the audience and referencing movies or making poor jokes, this ending would have been more reverent. By the end of the game, the joke gets old and seems more like a lazy gag than a legitimate ending.
I think that's what makes Conker's Bad Fur Day one of the weaker, rare games on the Nintendo 64. If they had better music, better characters, better controls, better level design, better bosses, maybe they could have gotten away with all this humor, but the poo flinging and the swearing just seems to cover up the fact that it's a really poorly executed game.
And that concludes our look at Conker's Bad Fur Day.
We're the game detectives, solving one mystery at a time.
Let us know what you think in the comments.